everybody, and welcome to the start of week 2. I sure enjoyed watching your introductory videos, or in some cases, audios, um, letting me know a little bit more about you. We've got a nice group. We've got 12 elementary school teachers, 4 middle school teachers, and 4 high school teachers. So that's a nice blend. One of our lower school or elementary teachers is an art teacher. I always love having art teachers in the group. Several of you said you like crafting and then a lot of outdoor activities. We've got one teacher who loops with her class with kindergarten and first grade, so that's going to be an interesting perspective. Several of you have special ed backgrounds, which always enriches the class. And we've got lots of dogs and cats and fish, a couple of grandchildren, and several of you mentioned having that some of your own children were identified as gifted. So this is a great mix of students in the group, and I know we're going to have a great first course experience together. So some of your comments with the discussion board, and by the way, you're all off to a very good start with the discussion boards. Make sure that you are citing our course readings as you interact with them. So don't just post reflections and some connections without, letting me know that you did read and which, authors or experts sort of stood out to you. So many of you did that. You were quoting Sally Reese or Renzulli or Gallagher or somebody. But so keep that up. Make sure in order to get full credit, and make sure that you are responding to 2 of your peers in addition to your initial response. But everybody looks like they're in pretty good shape there. Let's see. So several of you mentioned, that you think that that gifted students their needs are not being met in the regular classroom, and I tend to agree with you. You told horror stories in some cases of children with their feet on the wall and rolling on the floor and sitting out in the hall with nothing to do and expected to enrich themselves. Many of you are shocked by the lack of funding and mandates for gifted students, and you mentioned that you thought that gifted students would be treated like students with other exceptionalities, and in most states it's just not the case. You're going to be learning more about Georgia's rules and regulations in this course, and you'll learn even more in the assessment course. But in Georgia, we do look at multiple criteria. So a couple of you mentioned we shouldn't just look at intellectual ability. Well, in Georgia, we don't. So we look at cognitive ability, achievement, but we also look at creativity and motivation. So those things come into play. Georgia, as you will learn, is doing it right. We are leading the way, but many states are woefully behind. In Louisiana, where I live, students do have IEPs, gifted students, because they are part of special ed, gifted is. So it is funded in that it is part of special education, but they only identify kids based on an intelligence test score. So you're in the right place. Georgia is doing it right, but clearly there's still lots of work to be done. Some of you made the point that your average and below average kids often rise to higher levels when the gifted students are pulled out. I've definitely seen that happen. I think sometimes some of our gifted kids are our most vocal, and so they are the ones leading the discussions, blurting out, arguing points with you, and that sometimes makes it hard for other kids to get a word in edgewise. I think that gifted students need a blend of being heterogeneously grouped with other students at other levels, and then also they need times with their intellectual peers. And so that's when either cluster grouping, when you have a number of gifted students in one room, typically about 6 or more, is a great model. and or the pull-out model where you pull all the gifted students at a grade level or at a couple grade levels together. But the problem with the pull-out is, are you only gifted on Wednesdays, or are you only gifted an hour a day? No, you're not. So we can do that, but we also need to train regular classroom teachers how to meet the needs of the gifted, which is why you're taking this course. And many of you pointed that out, that you don't know what to do with gifted students. Most of us don't when we start out. In fact, when you're an undergraduate working on a degree in education or a certification, you at best get one course on the exceptional child, or it could have a different name, but a lot of us teasingly call it Disabilities on Parade. It's this course, it's an overview course. It talks about all kinds of exceptionalities. The last chapter talks about gifted. And most course instructors don't get to that last chapter. So they might say, oh, you should read this chapter, but they're not going to devote a class period to it. So most people don't read that chapter, or maybe they read it, but they don't get the instruction they need. So it's good you are taking this gifted endorsement class, and I hope you will learn a lot. I think you will. Let's see, what else? Several of you mentioned twice exceptional students, and we will get into that. In fact, this week, week 2, you will learn about some of the positive and negative characteristics of gifted students in general, and then about different special populations of gifted students, including twice exceptional. And there are lots of ways to be twice exceptional. It just means that you are, perhaps you are identified gifted and you are blind, or you are identified gifted and you have a learning disability. It can be lots of different things. Gifted students, and many of you pointed this out, they don't need more work. They need a different kind of work. They need something that's going to really engage them, inspire them, motivate them. Oftentimes it's something that taps into their creative potential. Project-based learning, a lot of you mentioned STEM or STEAM. Those things do tend to work well for most gifted students. One thing I want to point out now, and we'll talk about this more, but when several of you were shocked that gifted students don't have IEPs in Georgia, which is true, they don't. One thing that is in place, at least in Clark County schools, because I taught there for a number of years, is every student that is identified then has a contract developed. And it's typically the gifted eligibility team, which is the gifted teacher, probably the principal or assistant principal, and a classroom teacher. And they develop a list of strategies for enrichment and acceleration for that student. That contract is on file, probably in the your administrator's office or in the gifted office if there's one in your school. And that's going to be, I'd be surprised if in other counties in Georgia if this is not the practice. So you might ask your administrator or your gifted teacher and just kind of see what one of those contracts looks like. So let's say you're a classroom teacher and you know you have a child in your class that's identified. Ask if you can see their contract, because it should have some specific things that, kind of targets for the year. And those are revisited ideally mid-year and at least then again at the end of the year, and revised if they need to be. Sometimes we're so busy we don't get to that stuff. So it could be that not all of your students have contracts, or maybe they don't have them yet. I mean, most of us just started school, so it could take into September to get that going. But you might just want to ask about that. Say, I just kind of learned about this. I know they do it in Clark County. Do we do this? And if you're the classroom teacher, you should be able to see your students' contracts. If they tell you you can't see them, something's wrong. Anyway, so and this week you will have 2 discussion board requirements. One is to interact with what you read in week 2, and the PowerPoint that Dr. Crowder posts and those things. And then also, you're going to tell me what you would like to do for your field experience assignment. So please look at the guidelines for that and let me know if you have questions. But I want to approve or help you tweak what your plan is for that assignment. So we want to get started thinking about that this week. Okay, so hope your second week will be great. I had a good first week of school. It was a short one for me. The kids came Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Now I've got a 5-day week this week. So, and I was exhausted at the end of every day. I'm sure you are too. I mean, it got to be 7 o'clock and I just didn't know if I could stay in my clothes. I needed to put my pajamas on and get in bed. So this week, we'll see how I do. But I hope it'll be a great week for you, and I look forward to interacting with you in this second week of our course.